Hello, everyone, and welcome to your horoscope for the week of August the 26th till September the 1st, 2024. Well, what can I say apart from the fact that the intensity of the energies of everything that is ongoing continues? So, not a massive difference from that point of view. But we do have some energy shifts, which I do believe bring some clarity or at least push us into the right direction to find clarity somewhere in the close future. So it's still a little bit better. And of course, uh, just at the very beginning of the week that follows, so not next week, but the week that follows, we have a really powerful new moon in the sign of Virgo. So this is an energy buildup towards solution. Why? Because another important energy this week is that Mercury finally goes direct. It's not we're not totally out of the woods yet in regards to Mercury retrograde season because Mercury still needs to go forward and wrap up certain things, but this already in itself eases the energy and is already doors, windows, and everything are open towards solutions and for us to of course execute our new strategies, plans, things that we have refined, readjusted, perfected, maybe went back to square one and redone something all over again, and this is a better, newer, stronger, why not, version of the plan, or apply it in your own specific situation. So it's already good news from that perspective. And another important energy is that towards the very, very end of the week, so the 1st of September, Uranus goes retrograde. So this is big. This is very, very big. On one hand, because it's Uranus. I do believe that out all of the outer planet retrogrades, usually it's the Uranus one that is most immediately and how should I even say drastically felt because it just changes something in the air, the humors, something within us. So something quickly shifts. So we must prepare for that because this quick shift is also, in a literal sense, for example, in nature. So, weather, volcano, earthquake, the extremes in nature can show up around times when Uranus goes retrograde in any context. And also, it goes retrograde aiming, so its first target as it goes retrograde will be that 26 degrees of Taurus where Algol is. So it's almost like a gong. It will in its own way retrograde, right, replay all the events when it first triggered Algol together with Mars. So this summer, basically, in the big picture, that this summer. So that will be interesting. And speaking about Uranus retrograde, if I mentioned it, well, then let me say that the period is the 1st of September 2024, and it lasts until January 30th, 2025, so next year. But of course, the more interesting and intense periods are when it is when it's standing still in the sky, which will be all throughout this week. Even though technically speaking, it's around the 1st of September, but we can really feel it since this 26th of August already, because Uranus is not gonna move a lot. Very, very, very little. So yes, Uranus prepares its ground. It prepares its course. So this is where certain things will start to feel more and more and more and more urgent as we progress towards next week. And then quite possibly the urgency will trigger. And then the rest of Uranus retrograde will be for us to work around the issues. So again, this Uranus standing still in the sky will, as I said, start to turn the polarities of certain situations around suddenly, unexpectedly, sometimes even without warning. Like, let me give you an example. Let's say that you're in an argument, and until now, it was the other party person, especially let's say if this is a marriage or relationship, the other partner had for one reason or the other, the upper hand. Uranus stands still, something quickly happens, and you have the upper hand. So the situation turned around. What you do with your upper hand, well, this is where your wisdom, etc., but that might be the long-term Uranus retrograde, what you will do with your wisdom and gained knowledge. But you understand my situation, where one side is in a certain way catapulted into the position of the opposite side, where opposites are placed in each other's shoes, if you know what I mean. So this is going to be very, very interesting. Not just collectively out there, how it may change certain balances, situations on the world stage, especially economically, especially within the value of whatever that is susceptible to value, money or other types of value. So that there's going to be something related to that playing out without a shadow of a doubt. And it's, Uranus, it's usually unpredictable, sudden fall, sudden rise. Again, unpredictable is the best way to word it. However, that unpredictable many times comes with something positive, something good, something like a very, very rare occasion, but it's there. It might come through as an opportunity that you really need to grab onto very quickly before it disappears, but it can also come through as a certain kind of reward. But when I say reward, it's not necessarily the Saturnian type, because usually either Venus or Saturn come with rewards as per se. Saturn rewards hard work and sacrifice and patience, but this kind of reward is more like Venusian, because Venus is the ruling planet of Taurus, and she holds a trine, a supremely harmonious conversation with Uranus, even from the very beginning of the week. So I can highlight this. Uranus and Venus, Venus and Virgo. Okay, Venus is not very comfortable in Virgo. However, this is a trine. And Uranus is, holding the trine from her home, from her realm, earthly realm of Taurus. So that's a reward of some kind. And what are we rewarded for? As I said earlier, not necessarily the hard work, time, patience, sacrifice, Saturn, but Uranus, the intelligence, the awareness, the curiosity, and bravery. But when I say bravery, it's not that big, bold Leo type of bravery, but more like when it's a bit calculated. It makes sense to be brave because the odds are on your chance. So more like a mercurial kind of bravery. It's easy to be brave when it makes a lot of sense. It's easy to be brave when you know that, well, the odds are really in your favor. In that, you know what I mean? It rewards that because that's intelligence. It also rewards any expression when we give true importance and value to something very, very authentic, honest, and truthful. We find it to be of great value to us, in other words. So, again, value type of, and this can, of course, include anything that has to do with the self, even when we stepped out of our comfort zone, not waiting for life to push us out. That's a certain kind of Uranian wisdom, to go with the flow when life is easier in that sense. So, yeah, it rewards us for all these things when we were honest, authentic, when we stepped out of our comfort zone, when we tried new things. And, even sometimes if trying new things was not necessarily delightful or comfortable or whatever, we still remained with something learned, and our awareness is very much broadened. It is open, much more open than it was before. So we can work with that. So this is one of my very favorite aspects this week, because as I said, Venus was so very uncomfortable through this particular transit in Virgo. On one hand, of course, she was debilitated, but then she opposed Saturn, a strong reality check. And but don't get me wrong, the fact that she is in Virgo already adds a layer of criticism, right? Of analytical view of the world and everything in it, right? So that's already a bit reality check mode, right? But then Saturn comes with a whole new layer. And so Venus was not a very happy girl. But to make it even worse, she was an active part of the Saturn Jupiter square. She made it to be a T square. So she was and from Saturn Jupiter, she was the weakest planet here, especially that Jupiter is uncomfortable himself in Gemini. So we have a kind of grumpy Jupiter, but Jupiter rules Pisces, right? Where Saturn is. So if Jupiter is grumpy, Saturn is a bit colder than usual, because he has to be, especially in the cold sign of Pisces. Imagine Pisces as the very depth of the ocean. Well, it's not the sun that warms that. It's actually the heat from the crust of the earth that keeps that warm-ish. So you know what I mean? Conditions are different in the bottom of the ocean, Saturn and Pisces. And Venus, towards the actually towards the end of the week, before it leaves Virgo finally, it will also oppose Neptune. That's yet another kind of reality check. However, I hope I'm not mistaken gravely here. This particular opposition may not be all that big deal because she already got enough from Saturn. You know what I mean? The opposition to Neptune will be like child's play after she is through with the opposition with Saturn. But how should I say it? The opposition with Neptune can do a lot of bad, in the sense that it can undo all of our reality checks that we went through in the last couple of weeks. So we must make sure that Neptune doesn't drive Venus delusional. Because, again, from both of these planets, Neptune is way stronger because it's also in its home sign of Pisces. So it can really push Venus into some kind of delusional logic. Logic is logic, right? But fortunately, Mercury is also standing still in the sky, which means that the Mercury retrograde lessons are very highlighted still deep within us. Even those which we might have already solved under the retrograde season. But the conclusions or how we solved it or is still very fresh. So it's very, how should I say, um, within us all throughout the week. So right off the bat, this is how we begin the week. And speaking about Venus, yes, the trine with Uranus finally, but at the beginning of the week, she's not, sorry, she's not all that comfortable yet because she still holds a square with Mars. But this square has a lot of creativity, ingenuity, and a playful problem solving to it. So I actually like this square, if I'm allowed to say that, because it may make things tense at certain moments. It may even send us, Mars and Gemini back and forth between options. Is this better? Or was that better? Or should I even go back to the drawing board and start all over there's this side as well, right, Gemini? But all of this can also lead to creative detours, to our own ingenuity, to many times need. Venus and Virgo is the best muse for a new invention or a new way to solve a problem or a new way to go about something. Let me give you the simplest example. Uh, a tool that you depend upon on a daily basis breaks under this Mercury retrograde, and until you get it fixed, it really doesn't matter if it's a day or a week, but you will still need to improvise. And especially if life doesn't allow you to just wait. So this is what I'm talking about. Depending, of course, on your personality type, your configuration ultimately, this can be very annoying and irritating for you. And the fact that look how innovative you were doesn't even matter at the end. But this can also be like a fun adventure for other types of personality. So yeah, the fact that it's constructive and creative for some people doesn't mean a lot because they will still be their grumpy old selves. But speaking about creativity, Mercury, even though not perfectly, but it holds sextiles with both Mars and Jupiter. But that's where the other layer of creativity lies, because it is in the creative sign of Leo. And if we add a touch of playfulness, optimism, or something fueling that fire of determination, Mars, the reason or a goal that we wish to achieve and is so important and motivational to us, all of that fuels creativity. And everything that I said earlier with the Venus and Mars square, the creativity. Just that in this sense, we don't necessarily focus on the need that is not going anywhere, Venus and Virgo, but we more like focus on the playful approach of it. And let's see where new paths lead us. it will definitely guaranteed one thing is in the deal, as I said, guaranteed that it will lead to new learning or a new perception or a new vision. That is guaranteed. That is in the contract, so to speak. So yeah, but collectively speaking, you can imagine negotiations that either are not yet going anywhere or negotiations that actually take the whole thing 2 steps backward instead of, but it is also an eye opener because that increases the urgency, Uranus, right? We must remember that all of what I said, the fun and creativity, okay, but all of this, Uranus brings amps of the urgency, the inner anxiety, the stress levels. And we will be able to see this not just in ourselves and everyone around us, but also animals, pets, nature, even technology will be a bit stressed out, if that makes sense. So yeah, and I would imagine with Uranus standing still, and I'm sorry to just uh turn away from the main subject, electromagnetic phenomenon and Schumann resonance, so count on that. And short fuse and temper tantrums and stuff like that as well. Yeah. But let us move on the 27th. Uh, the 27th is kind of important because the moon conjuncts both Jupiter and Mars. Moon is our emotion. And in the sign of Gemini, this is really where the mind, Gemini, our uh, processor, if I can call it like that, our uh, primarily processor sits down with the emotional world and they consult each other. Jupiter, what's true, what's not true, right? We must not forget that the Jupiter Saturn square is fortunately not exact anymore, but it's still there. Just that Jupiter is progressing and Saturn is going backwards, so, but it will resume. Don't get much later on. But the square is still there. So what's true, what's not true? What do I believe in? Which version of something or my own unique personal philosophical system, faith system, what do I believe in? So searching for inner truth. But this can be understood even on a more superficial level. What does my sense of justice tell me about the situation? Jupiter, and then the moon. There's the rational, intellectual, mercurial part, and the ruler of Gemini actually sextiles, so that's really good. And then there is Mars. What action do I take after contemplating? So the moon adds a lot of emphasis on what we are trying to figure out or solve. And this will reflect collectively as well. Again, negotiations, talks, media, news, in both ways, Gemini, in both, a more not so favorable, backward going way, but also progress and new innovative solution type of way. And I'm not speaking about one conflict, I'm speaking about every type of conflict because this energy plays out both in the Middle East, but then also Ukraine, Russia, so my neighboring countries. It plays out in every single nation, country, internally, in their own unique way. There are either two or more sides that are not really tolerating each other, but it doesn't need to play out in a aggressive way politically. political bitching. And I'm so sorry to use this word, where politics makes no sense anymore, and it's really about just like kindergarten kids having an argument. When it turns to that, when you can imagine that it is stripped of all philosophical, social, moral value. Anyway, so yeah, we can see that play out on the world stage as well. And moving on the 28th, well, this is where already we reach Mercury wrapping up its retrograde. So Mercury stands still in the sky, prepares to go direct. We will definitely feel this, uh, especially that arguments that have been started and um, playing out under Mercury retrograde, well, they will definitely have either a conclusion moment or a retake, or they will start reaching the wrap up, right? The wrap up may happen, from this moment, this 28th of August, any moment until around, if I'm not mistaken, the middle of September, when Mercury leaves the shadow path. It will move past 4 degrees of Virgo. That's when it covers new ground, new territory. So by then, the Mercury retrograde themes should be solved and wrapped up, regardless of how it played out in your life. Maybe communication, relationships, changing profoundly your daily routines and schedule, or something with health and your physical body, Virgo or Leo. Actually both, but in which measure? So there's that. And also on this day, Venus starts opposing Neptune, and we are gonna feel this one way or another, because as I said, this energy can be drowning. Maybe pleasure will drown us, in the sense that uh Venus in Virgo, and she is still receiving trine from Uranus, which means there is something positive there. There is something fueling that Venus, especially that, as I said, this Virgo Venus needs something real, practical, down to earth, a true source of either pleasure or usefulness, or getting what she wants or needs, right? She is not her philosophical self. She is her down to earth Virgo self, right? So this also represents harvest, because Sun is in the sign of Virgo, especially the very early degrees. So that's very much the start of harvest, which means uh things ripening in any way, shape, and form. So this means the ripening of energies within nature, of course, situations in our lives, relationships. So again, this Venus does receive something, either a good news, for example, but she is receiving something good, something useful, something practical from Uranus. But the way Neptune can get involved is that might push her out of from reality. It might be a bit drowning to her. So where I'm going with this, regardless of how optimistic something may look like at the beginning of the week, so when Mercury stands still on the 28th, let's take it with a pinch of salt, okay? We must not allow a good news or a solution or something to push us off the course, because we will still need to be working strongly with our creative and creational energies, right? And we must not forget that Jupiter himself is not going to be moving all that much. So whatever good news or pleasant surprise, or this can very well represent like a donation, a gift, a practical help, a service that is offered pro bono or charitably, or something good news, something that really does a practical good. We must not allow that to, I don't necessarily want to say make us lazy, or because, of course, a moment of respite is very much deserved and needed. But that mustn't give us the impression that the struggles are over, if you know what I mean. So let whatever good news or positive surprise or usefulness, donation, gift, or romance, why not? Venus, after all, comes into our lives. Well, that doesn't mean all that much. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean that we're off the hook, or that the storm, or the maelstrom, better said, around us is over. Like, let me give you a bit of an inappropriate example. Venus and Virgo, Uranus and Taurus. In the life of some very lucky individual, this can mean a sensual experience that really, wow, either I can't believe that it finally happened after so very many years of dreaming of it, or whatever, or this was the best, insert here something, of my life. Okay, wonderful. It really gives you a hype, a boost, but you're not out of the woods yet. Just because you received something really beautiful, or a compliment from life, you know what I mean? So yes. But the other expressions of that can be quite good. Because Venus in Virgo, her critical self, right? Her analytical self. This positive expression of Uranus, especially, we must not forget that it is stationary, standing still in the sky. So very amplified. So however positively he affects this Venus, Venus may still, as I said earlier, look at this as, well, okay, but I'm not out of the woods yet. It doesn't matter how positive something feels, the big situation is still this and that. But then Neptune can come along and tell Venus, yes, Venus, but what a massive step whatever Uranus offered you was. So you're on the right path, right? And then this can really help Venus. This opposition can really be where Venus receives a good dose of good type of healthy type of optimism, or a bit of a dream, or a bit of a faith, of a belief. So it's really, really up to us to use this energy in such a way that it can serve our greatest good. Because Neptune, of course, comes with the magic, with the faith, with the belief, and a, a tiny touch of innocence and naivety is just like a sprinkles on top. It doesn't have to mean that we are being silly or stupid or delusional. Just a sprinkle of innocence and assumed naivety can make life feel much more easier and nicer. And if that is within our power to do that for ourselves or someone who we love, well, then it's our biggest duty, because the world is ugly enough as it is for some souls who are sucked into that dimension and they're not being released yet. So those of us who are free, and are able to sprinkle some magic into our everyday lives and reality to make it a tiny bit more magical and beautiful, it's our biggest duty. Because again, I have to say, we're not being delusional, we're just sprinkling a bit of. We're not coating it with that. It doesn't mean that we're ignorant or delusional. No, no, no. We know the doom and gloom and the dark and the ugly. We know it so well, but you know, we need to sprinkle that tiny bit of magic into our own lives and the lives of our loved ones, because that makes it livable. Remember, when one polarity is starting to become extreme, well, we need to aggressively feed the opposite if we want a balance of any kind. So we have no choice but to sprinkle the magic in onto our lives. We have no choice. We must provide the happiness, even if it's atypical for us personally. Right now, our collective future and reality depends on that. And speaking about nice things, let's move to the 29th, where the nice, oh, sorry, this is 30th. The niceness is provided by Venus finally exiting Virgo and entering into her palace of Libra, a part of the sky where she loves being in. Venus in Libra is really good because she does not discriminate. Libra is an inanimate sign. Libra is impartial. Libra is just the scales that will help us measure anything we put on it. It measures anything that we put on it, so it's up to us, right? Venus brings the beauty, the love, the fairness, equity, and the rejoice in that of philosophy, philosophical thinking, justice, morality, law. Besides Sagittarius, Libra is the other sign which is closely related to law, justice, legal system, the process of judging, weighing the options, analyzing something, but not in a Virgo or Scorpio sense, but rather through a Venusian way. What does the heart say? But also, what does the collective heart say? Morality is the collective heart, isn't it? So, yes. And of course, in this part of the sky, Venus is her more philosophical, more non-discriminate, more lighter, joyful, hypothetical, and platonic, so to speak, self. So she is very adaptable. She is very airy Venus. And why do I say that this is such a good news? Because you might say, yeah, but airy Venus might mean not all that practical and real as she would be in her other home sign of Taurus. Yes, absolutely. But Libra contracts, agreements, legally binding, anything. And that is good news. I'm not saying this guarantees peace treaties signed or any kind of contracts that we or the collective situation, or put it into context, in your life needs, but a good contemplation and progress, and that it does guarantee. Even if it's not the final word, it does guarantee a good brainstorming, especially because while being in Libra, she will meet on one hand Black Moon Lilith, And Black Moon Lilith does bring please excuse these words, but an ugly dose of truth to relationships and one-on-one alliances, Libra, right? Things that are usually not said, only pointed to subtly in certain situations. Well, in this season, Black Moon Lilith in Libra makes certain things be not all that very subtle. Venus will meet her, so she will really take into consideration, as I said, those elements which are usually not looked at. And that doesn't really have to mean something negative or compromising. Those are included. Yeah, okay. But it can be something like, for example, if Libra, right, is just the romance, the idea of romance. Well, Black Moon Lilith is that, okay, but romance and all that, we also need physical satisfaction. So Lilith brings the truth of how satisfactory is something physically. So when Venus meets with her, that's again a reality check of a different kind. Is something worth it or not? But this helps in decision making progress. Why? Because very soon after, or better said, in the meantime, even simultaneously, Venus conjoins the South Node in the sign of Libra under her direct rulership, because she has to dish out the South Node expression. And what is the South Node expression? What I do with relationships based on what I learned from the past, right? I do not repeat the mistakes. If I learn that my value system is different to what I always thought it was, then I act differently. I sign and accept contracts based on a different mindset, on a different value system, different even faith, why not? So we make different choices because we are different, long story short. But at the same time, the South Node in Libra can represent that if the same person, like a partner, right? Or a job, or someone from the past, something from the past, South Node in Libra, comes with something radically different than what you used to be, sorry, than what you're used to, that means the outcomes can be radically different as well. So what am I saying with this? If something from the past comes with something very, very different, then accepting that or considering that is not making a mistake, because different version means different outcome. So sometimes the South Node will mean giving, for example, an X, but replace an X with an X job, X company, X something that used to be part of your life, another chance if it changed radically and drastically. So, you know what I mean? This doesn't have to mean for everyone divorce, end of terminating. There's a lot of that, of course. But for other people means the opposite, giving it another chance, because finally he comes with something new to the table. Or finally he managed to do something which I've been telling him for years and was the reason why I broke up with him. You know what I so these are of course examples just. And these can be applied in non-romantic situations. The job, the company, the country, the city, the something that you will want to make part of your life. Um, there's this. But as soon as Venus enters Libra, ingresses that 0 degree, well, there's the highlight of the show. She holds a trine, briefly, of course, but still very important. Oh, sorry. Here we go with Pluto, an air trine, Pluto retrograde. So, this might bring up the past, big time. However, this is one of those rare occasions when it's actually maybe in a good way, maybe in an unexpectedly delightful way. We must not forget that before Venus entered Libra, she held that trine with Uranus. Uranus standing still, so the past is already being drilled down on in a Uranian way. And then there comes the trine with Pluto. Pluto retrograde, so of course the past. But it might not, it might be the distant past for some individuals, but for most of us, it is something that either started in December 2020, from that moment onwards, or something that has been highlighted in 2020 onwards. So, of course, depending on where this 0 degree of Aquarius is in your chart personally, but this might be one of those rare occasions where the future Aquarius, right, is built upon something innovative from unfinished from the past, if that even makes sense. Long story short, it's something positive. Collectively speaking, for example, how could this be positive? Pluto and Aquarius, right? Rebellious energy, the power of the people. That's a big pressure on no matter who you are, no matter, even if you're a dictator, you have to be aware of the power of the people. And the power of the people is the ultimate force. Because at the end of the day, even if it takes a year or 100 years, the power of the people will still prevail. And Libra is negotiation, diplomacy, diplomats, peace treaties, right? Power of the people making peace possible by pressuring their leaders. This is one of the examples and expressions how it can play out, and I find this wonderful. And another energy is supporting this. I'm not gonna mark this. You have to trust me here. Uranus, again, I will not repeat that Uranus is not his typical self this week. He is very emphasized, holds an opposition with, where are you? Pallas Athena in the sign of Scorpio, around 27, that 27th degree of Scorpio. Pallas Athena is tactics, wisdom, how we get from point A to B practically. It is theory, yes, but it's also applicable. And Uranus, a sudden change. Scorpio, change of values. This is also financial energy because financial access, self-worth, a big revelation there. So again, changes are knocking at the door both individually and collectively, financially or in a Venusian way, without a shadow of a doubt. And then finally, on September the 1st, we have the Uranus retrograde. Uranus standing still in the sky, starting at the 27 degrees of Taurus, and then after it will very, very slowly and but surely start making its way back to the degrees that it's already traversed in Taurus, 26 degree being the first destination, and I do believe the most important because it will reactivate alcohol and everything that happened with Uranus on alcohol. For example, Trump assassination attempt is one of the more notorious one. The Bangladeshi minister, or I do believe was she minister, something like that, being overthrown, also happened on alcohol. Joe Biden stepping down also happened on alcohol. Kamala Harris stepping up also happened on alcohol. Stepping up is equally as important as the typical stepping down, losing head one way or another. You know what I mean? Because Uranus promotes the new, the next, who has to take its place. And Uranus on alcohol, even those leaders who had like nothing all major happening to them, even then they were much more active in communication, decisions, choices, etc., etc. And the leaders who were actually assassinated. So again, when Uranus goes back to the 26th degree of Taurus, we will hear, or in one way or another, all of what I said earlier will reactivate again. But of course, we're not out of the woods even then, because Uranus will start going forward after the 30th of January next year, 2025, right? So it will reactivate Algol for the third and final time. So yes. And also on the 1st of September, we can see that, sorry about that, that Mercury already moved a degree forward from 21 degree where it's stationed to 22 degree of Leo, which means it also conjuncted the moon. So emotional clarity is coming. Our hearts are speaking literally. But of course, the moon herself is moving towards a new moon in the sign of Virgo to conjoin with the sun. But that later on, either on the 3rd or 4th, or I think 3rd of September. But anyway, and Mercury is slowly, still but surely, moving to perfect the third and final square with Uranus, which is very, very important. Because the way I see this third square, it is that this is the conclusion of what is worth it and what is not. Why? Because this is Leo and Taurus, right? Taurus shows us the value. And of course, we can understand this financially, but understand it in any way, shape, and form. For example, Taurus physical touch, right? If a physical touch, how pleasurable it is it worth it or not? In a very concrete, down to earth way, this can be for some people like that. And Mercury in the sign of Leo comes with the actual mental, intellectual processing of that. What my body told me. Well, yes, sir, it's worth it. I like it so much that I have to admit to myself that it's worth it and I'm staying in this relationship. Or the opposite, or whatever the conclusion is in your case. So this is very important. Not this week yet, but it's still preparing itself. So there is that. And what is very, very important is that Mercury holds his trine with Chiron. Chiron in the sign of Aries, retrograde himself. This is also a conclusion trine. Healing words, the power of love. Note that the moon will conjoin Mercury. When the moon conjoins Mercury, they hold the trine together. How beautiful. This is healing. Healing words or healing communication, the power of love. Remember what I said with the Venus Pluto trine, the bit of a sugar coat that all of us need. It is our responsibility to make each other's realities happier when there is way too much unhappiness everywhere. Then this is the only way we can counter it. So that is healing. That is really, really healing. Gestures of love, Mercury and Leo. Um, the power of a kiss, basically. That is so very much the energy of Leo and Aries together combined. In a real sense, this may mean a healing kiss, a healing gesture of affection, healing words, of course, healing compliments. And well, actually, I'm gonna say it, healing sex, because that is one of the expressions of this energy. Because this is a very sensual, very sexual fire trine, very, very positive. So, absolutely, the healing power of physical contact, the healing power of attraction being expressed. So, I think this is what I wanted to cover. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Remember the power of love, and it is our greatest duty to make each other's realities a bit sweeter, especially in this period when we have so much more that we can handle of the opposite. So, thank you, everyone, and until next time, bye for now.